there's only one place to start. 4 goals from Callum Lang saw Portsmouth thump Frank Lampard's Coventry 4-1. 3-word reviews for Pompey. Archie says, no, but seriously. Hancock Analysis says, goals, goals, goals. Daniel says, Lang's a baller. Tom says, piss off, Peachy. For Coventry, Daniel says, forking dreadful. Tiny says, Brad Collins shit show. Sky Blue Cal on our Patreon says, Jay De Silva out. Yeah, a fairly even first half, I thought, where Coventry perhaps unlucky to go in behind at half-time, but then second half, Portsmouth, or Callum Lang in general, pushed them aside.
Yeah, I found this game so intriguing and incredible because it just felt like Callum Lang was in the right spot at the right time every time.
Yeah.
Portsmouth blew Coventry away, but the way Callum Lang got his goals were, I wouldn't say there was an element of luck to them, but good movement and good reading of the play from Callum Lang. But as I say, the way the game was balanced in the first half was brilliant. I thought Cov started really well. But Portsmouth, the way they responded from that, they just blew Coventry away. Coventry had absolutely no answer to the way Portsmouth just built their attacks. And despite Callum Lang scoring a few fortunate goals, Portsmouth are well deserving of the 4 that they scored and probably could have scored more.
A few fortunate goals. He only scored 4 in a game. I think you are right to an extent. Justin, Coventry essentially gave Portsmouth the 3 points in that second half. They offered no attacking threat, and the individual errors really cost them. Brad Collins, the Coventry keeper, had a particularly bad day. He was at fault for at least 3 of the goals, wasn't he? And then Jay De Silva didn't have a great game either. Those 2 in particular have had fingers pointed at them by Coventry fans for this result. But I think the way Coventry just sort of rolled over after the 3rd goal went in was worrying. Maybe they just accepted Callum Lang decided to turn into prime Ronaldo that day and there was nothing they could do about it. I don't know, because he was on fire here, Justin. He's become the 15th player in Championship history to score 4 goals in a single game. And he's having a brilliant season in general, isn't he, old Callum Lang?
Yeah, I mean, he's stat padded in this game, but he's got 9 for the season now, which is incredible. But it's more so the fact that he scored pivotal goals this season. I think that's the big thing. He's been an important player this season for Pompey. You know, you've only got to go back to the first game of the season against Leeds, where Portsmouth ran their luck considerably. A bit of a theme. But, you know, the way Callum Lang, he scored one of the goals was an absolute screamer. You know, he's a player for the moment, and Portsmouth need that, especially when you're not going to be punching at the top of the table. You need players who are going to step up, and Callum Lang's delivered. He delivered in this game. And as I say, I know I'm being fairly jokey about the way he scored his goals, but you know, the 4th goal, for example, he was quickest to react to that one, and he's got to shoot, he's got to take his chances, and he does that really well. So yeah, he's been a big player for Portsmouth and a really good performance here.
Yeah, well, he said afterwards it was the best day of his career. And unsurprisingly so, because it's not often a player scores a hat-trick, let alone 4. I mean, you say it was a good game, just he was unbelievable, really, wasn't he? Because, I mean, any player who scores 4 in a game has had an unbelievable game. And he's really come to the fore this season. He wasn't really one of Portsmouth's standout players in their promotion last season, because he only joined halfway through. Scored a few goals after initially coming in, but then didn't have much of an impact after that. And this season, he's been Pompey's main man, him and Josh Murphy. Really, if it wasn't for those 2, Portsmouth would probably be bottom of the table by quite a distance at this stage. Yeah, he's been fantastic, works his socks off, and is a real live wire for Portsmouth this season. And this result sees them climb up to 20th, just in their highest position they've been in since August. Got 2 games in hand as well, it's worth mentioning. 1 loss in 6. And aside from that 4-0 thrashing against Derby last week, which is still one of the most bizarre results of the season, Pompey have been going from strength to strength recently, haven't they?
Well, if you conveniently leave out a 4-0 hammering away from home, you can't argue that they are going from strength to strength. But their form preceding that game, which is what made that performance very bizarre, was positive. It was good. They were a very difficult side to beat, and they were picking up results as well. And I think the thing that most impressed me is the fact that they responded to that Derby defeat last weekend. Their response in this game was fantastic. They go behind early as well. They've got a lot to sort of regain. You know, on the back of a 4-0 defeat, you'd expect confidence to be low. And again, Coventry started this game really well. I was expecting Coventry to blow Portsmouth away the way Derby did in that first sort of 15 minutes last weekend. But Portsmouth responded very, very well. And I think, as I say, it's that adversity to those moments that really impressed me. They put themselves up, they dusted themselves down, and they went up a gear. They showed that they weren't going to roll over and let Coventry dictate the game. Portsmouth went from strength to strength, as you were pointing out in this game, and showed that they have been in good form despite that defeat last weekend.
Well, I'm glad their results have been matching their performances, because they weren't playing as badly as their position in the table suggested, in my opinion. And now they're climbing up the table very nicely, and things were looking a bit troubling not long ago for them, weren't they? So for them to be 20th now is a great improvement, and I like to think they'll be one of the clubs who will strengthen the most in January, because there's definitely areas where they need to improve. I think even with this good vein of form, that's undeniable. But it looks to me like Portsmouth are on their way now to having the sort of season we expected them to have at the start of the season. January is going to be massive in creating ground between them and the bottom three, that's undeniable, but it does look like they are starting to fulfill the expectations that many people had of them this season and try to create, as I say, a bit more ground between them and the bottom three. Frank Lampard now had 5 games in charge of Coventry, Justin. It's 2 wins, 2 losses, 1 draw. What have you made of Frankie Lampard's start in the West Midlands?
I think it's quite. I mean, I'll be blunt here. I wasn't a big fan of the appointment. That being said, I have been a big fan of the performances that Coventry have put in since he was appointed. Other than this one, I think this game is the real outlier here. This was a really poor performance. The 4 games preceding this awful defeat were okay. They were fine. They looked like they were going in the right direction. But this game really does bring to surface problems within the squad, not necessarily with the management. It was a gutless performance from Coventry, a real gutless performance, and I don't think that's down to Frank Lampard. The heads dropped very, very hard, and I think quality-wise, the squad is good enough to compete for the top 6. But mentality-wise, it just doesn't seem like something's there this season, which is quite strange. Which is not on Frank Lampard at all. So Frank Lampard's first 5 games they've been fine. They've been fine. There's nothing to be too critical about. There's nothing to be too positive about.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair assessment, Justin. It's interesting because after the sacking of Mark Robins, some quotes from Doug King have come to light about Coventry's points tally come Christmas time. He said, if you get to Christmas with 26 points, the pressure will be triple, the players will be thinking about the summer, and the season's gone. That's why I acted as I did in sacking Mark Robins. Well, it's now Christmas and Coventry aren't on 26 points, they're on 24. So that would imply maybe Lampard's not started as well as Doug King was expecting. Maybe not. Look, there's clearly a few issues at Coventry which Lampard won't be able to sort out in a matter of weeks, and individual errors like they suffered against Portsmouth, they happen. I do think Coventry have timed Lampard's appointment, so he has more kinder games, in air quotes, and so I'm not sure if 2 wins from 5 is good enough, really. So I don't know. Time will tell with Lampard, but considering how strong we were with our criticism just around the appointment, we can safely say we've not been proven wrong by any means. We haven't been proven right either, but we've definitely not been proven wrong, and that's where we'll leave Lampard for now, I suppose. Luton, they were 1-0 down in the 88th minute, but 2 late goals saw them beat Derby County 2-1 on Friday night. 3 red reviews for Luton. Dan on our Patreon says Rob Limpson. Skeeter on our Patreon says happy but sad. Dave says points over performance. How was that this one, Justin? As I mentioned in the preview show, I was actually in the Luton end, not the Derby end. And so I witnessed firsthand how frustrated Luton fans were getting. But my lasting memory from this game is going to be, how on earth have Derby lost this one?
Look, if you're leading in the 89th minute, you can't lose the game, can you? It did feel like Derby had an element of control. I think Luton probably maybe edged the intensity of the game, but it was a game devoid of big moments, big quality moments. No one really took the game by the scruff of the neck. I think even with Luton scoring 2 deflected goals, you can't argue that they took the game by the scruff of the neck with the 2 winners. And look, we've criticised Paul Warne a lot. You could see his blueprint on this game. The game was devoid of quality from both sides. But I think, you can argue that, how did Derby lose this game? But for me, I think Derby are too soft in the final moments, if you like. late decisive goals have plagued them, I think, all season. You look at the Norwich game at home, Watford away, Millwall away, Stoke away, Sheffield Wednesday at home. All drop points after conceding in the final 15 minutes of games. This isn't bad luck, as Paul Warne would describe. This is a mentality thing, as I was describing with Coventry losing their arses against Portsmouth. Derby might have a habit of doing it in the final 15 minutes of games.
I think that's very harsh, Justin. I think that's extremely harsh. I
don't think it is harsh, because there's repeat behaviour here. There's not behaviour, but there's repeat evidence that Derby are not concentrating until for the final 15 minutes of games.
I think that's very, very harsh, because one of the goals was a massive deflection. The other one has Derby have cleared it onto another player's arse, and then it's fallen to Adebayo's feet.
That's how the goals have gone in, how the goals got to that point. Are Derby clearing their lines? Are they managing those moments better? Are they controlling possession? No, not doing any of that. And that's why they're getting pegged back.
They did control. They controlled the game for the vast majority of that second half. It was just, that's how you look full sometimes in these games.
Because Luton,
I don't agree with that at all. Look, I'll be the first person to criticise Derby, particularly when it comes to Paul Warne's approach to away games. But I thought this was their best away performance of the season by quite a distance. In the second half, I don't recall Luton being in the final third until right at the very end. Derby were controlling the game, and Luton fans around me were getting increasingly annoyed, and it seemed like they had everything under control. And then you were saying on Friday, Justin, for Derby to get a result, it's going to have to go in off a Derby player's arse. Well, Luton's equaliser came off Tom Holmes' arse, and then the winner, Derby tried to clear it out and kicked it against one of their own players' arses, and Luton score. And the general sense around me and the Luton end was, how the hell have we won this? So a bizarre game where I think both sets of fans are fully aware that a robbery took place here. But as I say, Justin, I was sat amongst the Luton fans, and it's amazing how dead the atmosphere was for 9/10 of this game. Kenilworth Road, typically a tough place to go, but you could hear a pin drop at various points of this game. And for the first 70 minutes, the loudest response from the Luton fans was them chanting Sonny Bradley's name when he got subbed off. Obviously, their former defender, now at Derby. And then from 70 minutes onwards, you had this sense of building frustration. And I was picturing a very toxic atmosphere as Rob Edwards walked back down the tunnel after the game. But then one of the biggest cheers from Luton fans before the equaliser was Pelach Kempanzu coming on, someone who Luton fans obviously love, as we all know, after rising through the leagues with them, but hasn't been getting a look in this season. So it was interesting hearing that response. Justin, what do you think of that?
It's not a surprise that a player of his commitment and tenacity and attitude within games gets that sort of response from fans, because he's what Luton epitomises. He is what Luton needs, I think. It's that hardworking player who's going to leave every single ounce of energy on the pitch, and he's going to do so with a lot of pride as well. And I think you need players like that. I'm not suggesting that current Luton players don't have pride or they're not leaving everything out on the pitch, but there's a reason why they're losing games. There's a reason why they're out 14 games. And I think it's down to that mentality that Luton have been built on over the past few years just isn't there. They're very used to losing from being in the Premier League. And I think that attitude of, we'll feel sorry for ourselves has dripped into the squad a little bit. Whereas Pelach Kempanzu, for me, he's a player that doesn't come across like he really gives a shit about that. He just wants to win a game of football. He wants to battle. And I think that's why Luton fans are so, revered by him, if you like. So, more of him. And it's probably why they had such a good reception for Sonny Bradley as well. Because again, he reminds you of what Luton has been built on over the past few years. So it's a big nod and a big sign. I wouldn't say encouragement, but Rob Edwards, this is what we're after, sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, prior to this game, he had only played 5 minutes of football for Luton in 2 months. And that's not down to injury or anything like that. Rob Edwards just hasn't been picking him. He's been on the bench all this time and not even got a look in off the subs bench. And while he might not be the most talented midfielder Luton have by any means, surely you just pick him for a few games just from a PR standpoint, if you're the manager, just to keep the fans happy. Do you know what I mean? Because we all know what Kempanzu offers. A lot of hard work, a lot of endeavour. He's a big team player. And Luton's midfield has very often been bypassed quite easily this season. So I don't see why Edwards wouldn't give him more of a chance. So I'll be interested to see what he does after having such a big say in their revival in this game, because up until he came on, Luton offered very, very little. But yeah, I think the overall summary for this game, Justin, is it's another dodged bullet for Rob Edwards. They're absolutely hopeless away from home. We've talked about that a lot recently. And at Kenilworth Road, the results have been good. The performances, not so much. And this was another example of that.
Yeah, I think an interesting thing as well is he made a comment about there being 10,000 managers in the stands, which I'm not looking into massively, but it's clear Rob Edwards is hearing the noise from the supporters, and it's clearly getting his back up. But again, from a PR perspective, you want to avoid those types of comments. It didn't end very well for Tim Volter, is all I'll say. But you need to. I like that he's come out fighting in that sense, because it shows that there's one of the criticisms I have of Rob Edwards this season is he's been far too sad. In his post-match press conferences, he's been far too sort of feeling sorry for himself and the team, and you can't have that when you're one of the quote-unquote big hitters in the Championship. So for him to come out, almost swinging in a sense, not swinging, but he's pushing his way through a crowd. He's not quite swinging, but he's pushing his way through a crowd. There's something there, there's a sign of life from Rob Edwards, which I see as a step forward. It is a dodge bullet because it was a poor performance, and they should have lost this game. But he's come out, he's owned it, and that's what he needs. It's what the club needs.
One thing I forgot to mention is Luton fans were chanting, "It's a miracle," when Rob Edwards decided to bring on Joe Taylor for the last 5 minutes, because he's a young lad who was scoring goals for fun in League One and League Two last season. He's been restricted to just 139 minutes of football this season. And that's another big bugbear for Luton fans with Rob Edwards, of which there seems to be quite a few. So yeah, just a really strange situation at Luton, which I've found to be even stranger after being in and amongst it on Friday night. And I don't know how it's going to end, Justin. But to be honest, I don't see it ending well, put it that way.
No, this is it. When you've got fans being very sarcastic towards your manager, it doesn't go in the way you need it to go. But as I say, I think Rob Edwards coming out, semi-aggressively in his post-match presser shows that there is that fight there, and I think that would fill me with a lot more confidence if they start to repeat those types of or that element from the manager on the pitch. That's what they need to display on the pitch, that element of fight and scrap and what have you. And I think
we haven't
they did
seen that, though, have we,
parts.
Justin?
Well, exactly. We've not seen it, and that's why you've got fans being sarcastic. That's why you've got fans disillusioned with things at the moment. It's why you've got a very strange atmosphere at Kenilworth Road, which, I go back to maybe the season before last, where you've got fans literally banging the side of the pitch, that opposite the touchline where the cameras are. It might have been the Sunderland game. I remember sort of sticks in my mind where you've got fans banging inside of the pitch and the boards on the pitch, and the atmosphere's pumping.
The advertising hoardings.
Yeah,
right,
the advertising boards. Yeah. You've got fans who are up for it. It doesn't feel like that, and that's where you're coming from.
Yeah, they're definitely not up for it from what I was hearing. I spoke to quite a few Luton fans on the night, and not many of them seem to be Team Rob Edwards in at this stage, which is a really sad sight to see. But that's just the state Luton Town are in right now, and I don't really see how it's going to get better before it gets worse. Sheffield Wednesday beat Stoke 2-0, despite being down to 10 men for the entire second half. 3 word reviews for Wednesday. Lee on our Patreon says, windy, wild win. TCJH says only 10 men. Matt says James Beadle masterclass. For Stoke, Nick says another stokiness season. Tim says even more shite. Rushy says Pelach must go. Dave says big steaming pile. A pretty crazy game, actually. A lot of it seems to stem from the performance of referee Sam Allison. Seems like both sets of fans aren't happy with him. I can certainly understand why Stoke fans weren't after a penalty wasn't given for a handball against Barry Bannon, even though everyone in the stadium thought it was a handball, apart from the referee.
Yeah, watching it back, Bannon basically catches it.
Yeah.
Do you know when you're a wicket keeper or you do the cricket thing? I don't do cricket. I don't play cricket. But when it's a late diving, the ball's coming towards you, you dive towards it. It was so obvious. Like his arm was outstretched from his body. Bizarre decision from the referee, and one that he won't look back and with fondness, if you like. This isn't a good one for my career. Is that sort of decision?
I'm not sure this whole game was, to be honest, because it is also worth mentioning Stoke did eventually get a penalty late on for a foul on Sam Gallagher, which didn't look like a foul. So some odd decisions from the referee here. Obviously, there was the sending off as well. That was Sean Bedard, who was sent off for 2 yellows. And to be honest, I'm surprised he didn't get a straight red for the first yellow. So, as I say, not sure about the refereeing in this one at all. But ultimately, a brilliant and heroic performance by Wednesday, despite being a man down for so long, just in the entire second half. And they scored 2 goals and won.
Yeah, it's mad how that transpired, really. I mean, we've spoken about Sheffield Wednesday needing to improve their home form, and obviously they get a good win here. Almost a confidence-boosting win, a reassuring win. After the week that they've had as well, you've got Danny Rule heavily linked with the Southampton job, and I'm sure if Southampton would have paid that compensation, would have been a very difficult game yesterday. You've had players impacted by illness coming into their game. They've had a lot to overcome. And then you're down to 10 men as well. And it felt like Wednesday controlled most parts of it as well, which is a damning indictment of Stoke, but also a huge sign of encouragement that Danny Rule's got this squad going in the right direction. Because, I mean, they're up to 9th in the Championship. Consistency is starting to develop. Yeah, this is a really good place for Sheffield Wednesday at the moment.
Yeah, I think in the circumstances, Wednesday fans would have been happy with a point in this game. But the score 2 and win is exceptional. And yes, Stoke aren't a great side right now, but still an excellent result. And look, Justin, Wednesday are only 3 points off the playoffs now. Since the start of October, no team outside the top 4 has won more points than them. And you talked about everything there, Justin, about things going against them, Danny Rule being linked with a move away from Hillsborough. But it's got to be said, Wednesday, they're on a roll, aren't they?
No, I thought we were past this.
Nope.
You had last season. I can't even remember. Yes, Wednesday are on a roll. I can't even remember what he said. I'm sort of completely not flabbergasted, but just disappointed. But look, yes, Wednesday are on a roll. Like I said, they're turning that inconsistency that's plagued them this season into consistency at a good time. It's just whether or not they can find the right personnel in January to bring into the squad to add to it. Players haven't quite got rolling yet. Ike Ugbo, for example, is what you should have. Ike Ugbo is one of them. Defensively, they've had a strange crisis going on where they've barely had any fit centre halves, proper centre halves. The amount of times they've had to play fullbacks in the back three this season has been ridiculous. So Danny Rule's had to cope with a hell of a lot. And it seems to have sort of peaked this week, and they come out with a win where they're down to 10 men. Referee's a bit shit. Clearly the conditions weren't great, and they come out with a 2-0 win. This has been a very, very positive week for Sheffield Wednesday.
Well, they were massively inconsistent a couple of months ago, weren't they? And it was really holding them back. But now they've started to get rid of that and build some serious form. They've had a few games where they have been a bit fortunate, but if they keep picking up results like they are, then who knows? Who knows what the ceiling is for Wednesday this season? I think it just shows how bloody good a manager Danny Rule is, because he's not got the greatest set of players at his disposal, in my opinion. But they definitely don't like fight, and he's getting every last bit of effort out of these players. So well done to him. It's not the same situation at Stoke City. They're now winless in 8. And the fans were fuming. Here, there were boos after the game. At one point, a section of the away supporters were chanting Stephen Schumacher's Barmy Army, which is not a great indictment of Narcís Pelach's results, particularly because it wasn't like Stoke fans loved Stephen Schumacher. They thought he was all right. But they prefer to have him than what they're getting at the moment.
Yeah, it's quite shocking, isn't it? How long ago was it when we were discussing Narcís Pelach, where we were saying, I think, he still needs a bit of time to instill what he wants to get out of this group. It must have been 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago. I can't quite remember. But
wasn't that long ago, was it?
No, it wasn't. But quite a few games have passed since then. And I'll be honest with you, right? This group of players isn't this poor. It's not 2 wins in 10 poor. And I think in this run of 10 games that they've had, the worst of it is they've not really played any really tough teams consistently. They played Sunderland and Burnley, granted, lost to both of them. The rest of the sides, they've played Sheffield Wednesday, Cardiff, Luton, Preston, teams that have been around them that they've not been able to beat. And you've got to be beating them. You have to be beating them. If you're going to put in a convincing argument that you are the man for Stoke City, you've got to be beating these teams, and they just haven't. And that is the worry. I think the bigger worry is I've got no idea what Pelach is trying to do with the squad. Possession-wise, they're dominating more of the ball, but they're still very open defensively. They're still conceding a fair few chances. And when games are tight, they're not creating chances either. So I'm just wondering, what is Pelach trying to get out of this group of players? And there's not really any pragmatism. There's not really any sort of fluid football going forward. It's possession for possession's sake at times, without much punch. And that's when you've had a fair amount of time, 2 international breaks, 3 international breaks. Can't quite remember if it was important before the September international break or after, but you had plenty of time to at least get something across. It doesn't feel like anything's settled in yet, and this game again is I think a bad of indictment as you get.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said there, Justin. And if Stoke aren't careful, they could very easily sleepwalk into a relegation battle, or even just relegation in general, because there's a very good chance of that happening right now. They were in serious danger of going down last season, and seem to be going through stokiness all over again. We did highlight this not long ago, didn't we? That Stoke have actually been playing pretty poorly since Pelach has come in. And they seem to have got worse since then. They're conceding a scary amount of chances, even against teams with 10 men. And it's a good thing that they have Victor Janssen. Otherwise, they probably would be in the bottom 3 right now. He has won them a lot of points this season. They've been dealt another blow because Miljan Manhoef's now going to be out for 3 months. Everything that could go wrong seems to be doing just that with Stoke. And it may get to a stage where they may have to just knock this Pelach experiment on the head. And look, he's only been there for 3 months. But if they don't, they could be in trouble because they're going in the wrong direction. Well, got plenty of teams improving around them, who we'll talk about plenty in this episode. So it's a worrying time for Stoke City, and it doesn't seem like it's getting any better anytime soon. Right, ladies and gents, it's now time for us to talk about our bet builder from the preview show on Friday. That was on the Luton v Derby game, and a £10 stake was due to return £50. We had under 3.5 goals, which of course came in because it finished 2-1. We had under 5.5 cards. There were 4, so that came in as well. We had Elijah Adebayo to have a shot on target, which came in. And we had Luton Town to win. So we've got a winner on the bet builder, ladies and gents. Justin Peach, we have nailed it. It was never in doubt.
It was never in doubt. You were absolutely right. Even in the 89th minute when Luton did not look like scoring, it was never in doubt. God bless Tom Holmes' arse, I tell you.
Yep. Absolutely. And do you know what's even more remarkable, Justin? Adebayo's shot on target was from the winner. That's the only shot on target he had in the game, where it's deflected off a Derby player into his path. He's shot and it's been saved, and then Morris puts it in. So that passage of play has won it for us. It's incredible scenes here on the Second Tier podcast. But let's go to our multiple. A £10 stake on our multiple was due to return £37. We had Luton to win. My pick of Leeds to win came in. And then Justin's pick of Middlesbrough to win didn't come in. Justin, what's your problem?
No. That's not what my problem is. It's Borough not being able to control a Plymouth side who were pretty shit. But they weren't shit in that game. We'll get onto that. But they were pretty good. But Borough couldn't do it. It's nothing down to me. It's nothing down to any jinxes. It's all down to Michael Carrick. Yes, that's it. Michael Carrick.
You defer that blame. But yeah, a pretty good preview show for us. So we'll be back with another round of picks in tomorrow's preview show with SBK, where we'll be looking to head to the Boxing Day games. But let's have a quick break, Justin. After that, we'll talk about that crazy game at Home Park, as well as a 95th minute winner for Millwall. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast. It's now time for us to reveal the winner of our latest edition of Jameson's Weekend Heroes. So every single week, we're asking you to nominate a fellow Championship fan that you believe deserves recognition. Now, that could be someone who drove you to a recent away day. Or it could be that person who is taking you back and forth from away days or whatever, or getting your tickets for you on a weekly basis. Whatever it is, we want to hear about people like this. So to nominate your Jameson Weekend Hero from this weekend, send us a voice note now on WhatsApp explaining your nomination. The number is in the show notes. And of course, if we pick you, you'll win a bottle of Jameson to share with your winner. Exactly what you need around this time of year. But on to this week's nomination. We've got this message from Tom, who wanted to nominate his dad.
Hello, gents. My name's Tom. I'd like to nominate my dad, Nigel, as this week's Jameson's Weekend Hero. His crowning achievement in football is definitely the fact that he managed to get me and both of my brothers interested in supporting Sunderland, even though the exact time that he started taking us to games was when we got relegated with 19 points, and then went down to the Championship, came back up the next year and got relegated with 15 points, which was pretty miserable. It was actually the record all-time lowest points achieved in the Premier League for quite a while, until a different team came along and helpfully took that record off us. Can't actually remember who did that now. I don't know which club that was. Maybe you guys could remind us. But yeah, and then also when I was 10, I wanted to play football locally, but there was no under-11s offering at my local team. So my dad stepped up and founded a new team so that I could play football every weekend. And some weeks he even took me off the bench. So that was a great time for everyone involved. And now he's in his 70s now. He doesn't get to games anymore, but he's always cheering us on from the sidelines or from home. Thank you very much, guys. Cheers. Bye.
Not sure the dig about the Premier League season was needed, Tom, but here we are. I think this brings up a very important thing which doesn't get talked about enough, and that is the hassle of having to manage a boys' football team. Do you know what I mean? Because we've both played in boys' football teams, and I just know it must have been a nightmare for our respective managers, who we gave a lot of stick to when we played together. But
yeah,
but it's a thankless task, isn't it?
It is a thankless task, and I think this is why Tom's dad very much deserves being a hero, or recognised as a hero, just for that. Let alone getting him into Sunderland and keeping his sons interested in Sunderland during a tumultuous period at the club. Yeah, it's a very hard thing supporting a club who are just about to set the lowest points tally in Premier League history. I can tell you that from experience, Tom. It was Derby, and it is tough. But you're absolutely right. Yeah, just managing a football team is horrendous. But the fact that Tom's dad founded a football team so he can get his lad playing, it's beautiful, beautiful. Yeah.
Sounded like there wasn't nepotism involved as well, which has often been the case in football teams that I've played in as a youth. Anyway, Tom, your dad is an absolute legend. Nigel, here's a glass of Jameson ginger and lime, which we're raising to you to mark your legendary status. We're going to have a quick swig, Justin and I. A lot of ice rattling around in yours, Justin. But it is delicious, as always, isn't it? And remember, you can nominate your Jameson Weekend Hero right now by sending us a voice note on WhatsApp. The number is in the show notes, so just 60 seconds explaining your nomination, and you'll be in with a chance of winning a bottle of Jameson. You must be over 18 to enter, UK only, and T's and C's apply. Right, let's go back onto some more championship action from the past few days, or from this weekend even. Ruben Sellers got his first win as Hull boss by beating Swansea 2-1. 3-word reviews for Hull. Georgie says, what a relief. Ben says, sweet, sweet relief. Jamie says, table clambering tigers. Hack says, off the bottom. For Swansea, Raymond says, lacklustre, spineless, half-arsed. Scaramouche says, didn't turn up. Dino says, stealing a living. Not only was it Ruben Sellers' first win, it was Hull's first win in 14. So, fair to say, long overdue, Justin.
Yeah, the second home win of the season and the first win in 14, first win since October 1st. The clocks weren't even rolled back by then. At that point, we still had daylight at 4 p.m. It was an incredible time. Incredible time. Yeah, such a long time ago now. But yeah, I think that the manner in which they won the game, I think, was quite emphatic and probably 2-1 scoreline. Maybe not doing Hull's dominance and just them being much better than Swansea, justice in that sense. So credit to Ruben Sellers for I say turning things around, because he's in a pressure cooker situation at Hull, and I'm saying he's turning things around. The performances have been a lot more convincing under him. Not a massive, not blowing teams away, but there's more organisation. There's more semblance of a plan under him than there was under Tim Walter, which is a big thing. And I think, considering the tightness of proceedings down at the bottom of the table, Derby in 16th on 24 points and Plymouth on 18.6 points it's really tight down there. So you can imagine the situation that Ruben Sellers walked into. So this is a massive pressure lifted off of him.
Yeah. To be fair, he has gone from basically the fire at Reading, hasn't he, to the pressure cooker at Hull, hasn't he? So even though Hull's situation has obviously been very bad so far this season, it's definitely not as bad as what he was dealing with before. So I think this is just a massive relief for everyone at Hull, really, because you mentioned it there, just in 80 days since they last won. That is just such a ridiculous amount of time to have gone without a win into it. And the relief was even stronger here because they fully deserved the 3 points. If Mason Burstow didn't score late on, then it would have gone down as 2 dropped points massively. Perhaps they could have won this by more, really. Whatever the case, it's definitely a lot better than what was being served up by Tim Volter. That much we can say for sure. And this win has seen them leapfrog from bottom of the table to outside of the bottom 3, which is quite an incredible turn of events, isn't it, Justin? As you were alluding to there, it's still very tight at the bottom, but that's what one win can do because it is so tight down there.
It can be a mental thing, a mental improvement. I know Hull are only 1 point above the bottom 3, and Cardiff, Oxford and Plymouth are all level on 18 points in the bottom 3. But just looking at the table and seeing your team, your club bottom, it can be a demoralising thing. So just getting up the table, I think, is the first thing. And then once you get up the table, it's putting points between yourselves and those that are fighting relegation. And I think Hull's squad's got the capability of doing that. It's just having a manager who's got a plan and identity to instill it and also put confidence in the players. I know I keep bringing it back to Tim Volter, but he didn't inspire any confidence in the players. The situation that Ruben Sellers has been at Reading, you've got to inspire your players. You've got to get them playing for the club. And that's a bigger thing as big a thing as having a clear style of play. So I think that man management side of things is going to push Hull up the table, whereas maybe the performances might not pick up at the same time. But as I say, getting points on the board, performances in, and grinding out wins is all Hull need at the moment.
Yeah, I think I'd be coming out of this game being very encouraged if I was a Hull fan, because they have been a complete and utter mess. This season could have very easily gone off the rails, and even though this squad should be not going down, there was every chance that it could have done because of how badly the season had gone so far. And while it is still very early days, Ruben Sellers has calmed everything down, and the difference in the short time he's been there has been huge. They weren't great against Coventry last week, but they looked a lot more organised, and that was the same against Swansea here, and they're having more of an attacking threat as well. If you're on as dreadful a run as Hull were, then you need someone to come in, tighten things up and get confidence back up as well. And Sellers is doing that. And just looking at their upcoming fixtures as well, they've got some tricky games coming up, but they look like they've got a lot more about them now than they did under Volter. That's the main thing here. Just I know we've spoken a lot about Tim Volter in this section, but that's what we're comparing things off here, isn't it?
Yeah, but you've got one really nice human being and a good coach in Ruben Sellers to one. It's a bit of a hothead and a bit of a nightmare to deal with in Tim Volter. It's chalk and cheese. You can tell, you get the sense of that as a supporter. And if you've got a manager there who's inciting frustration, not purposefully, but he's doing nothing to get the fans on board in Tim Volter, then it's only going to be harder to support your club and get behind him and get confident behind him. And that's going to seep into the players as well. So yeah, I imagine what the fans are experiencing, the players are experiencing it as well. And so it's important that Ruben Sellers turns that around very quickly. And it feels like he is, which is what Hull need.
A 95th minute winner from Mihailo Ivanovic saw Millwall stop the Blackburn juggernaut. 1-0 it finished at the Den. 3 reviews for Millwall. Matt says, big effing Serbian. George says, comes from Serbia. Tony says, shackles are off. Yeah, this was Millwall's first game post Neil Harris, and he would have been looking down on this team, Justin, with a big smile on his face. He would have been very proud of his players here because they definitely deserved the win, didn't they? And it's just a bit mad that it took so long for the goal to come, really, didn't it?
Where's he looking from?
I'm picturing kind of like a Mufasa, Lion King kind of situation where he's looking like down over the Den.
In Happy Gilmore when Chubbs is
I was thinking more like the Lion King, but that one I quite enjoy, actually. Neil Harris, Steve Morrison, Lee Gregory, all waving at David Livermore, the caretaker manager. That's what I'm going for here.
Nothing else to add. Yeah, this was a game that each one of those players would have been proud of as well. This was a tight game, which I think Millwall did edge. I did say in the preview as well, I think this will go one of two ways. Blackburn score early and win, or Millwall score late and win. And, Millwall scored late, very late, and won this one. But I think you needed to put in a stern performance against Blackburn team to nullify them. And I think once you nullify them, they do find it difficult to get out of it. And I think Millwall probably ran their luck a little bit, scoring that late. But you take your chances because I think 9 times out of 10 this game finishes 0-0. But Millwall rose to that occasion, so did Ivanovic. He scored 2 late goals, 2 big goals now for Millwall. So he's I wouldn't say he's justifying the fee that they spent him in the summer, but 2 late goals is a big thing for a kid.
I'm not sure Millwall running their luck, because that would imply that they didn't deserve the win, because they definitely did. They were much the better team in this one, which is surprising.
Game. I just thought it was a battling game, and I think, as I say, I think 9 times out of 10 this is one of those fixtures that just finishes 0-0, because whilst they were the better side in terms of chances, there wasn't a hell of a lot of quality. I did think that Marco and Esse and Aziz were all brilliant in that sort of 3 pivot, but I still think Millwall are lacking that number 9 who's going to convince me that they're going to turn these games into more convincing wins, which is what they need. It's what they were lacking in this game, I think.
I'm not denying that, the lack of a striker, because I think that's very evident for all to see. But Blackburn offered very little in this one. Millwall were by far the better team. Surprising, really, because of how brilliant Blackburn have been. But only one team ever looked like they're winning this one, and it was the one who was winless in 6 heading into it. In fairness, Blackburn did have a chance with Andy Vyman fairly late on, but otherwise didn't have a sniff, which is strange because they were high on confidence. But yeah, the Millwall winner came from Mihajlo Ivanovic, who I imagine a lot of neutrals aren't aware of. He's a 20-year-old Serbian lad who Millwall signed for £2.5 million in the summer. He's only started 2 games this season, which, as we were just alluding to, considering Millwall have been struggling with strikers this season, bit strange that he hasn't featured more, so it'll be interesting to see if he gets more of a look in under the new manager. Speaking of which, Justin, Alex Neil is reportedly set to become the new Millwall manager. They're said to have spoken to multiple candidates, with the former Stoke manager fitting the club's philosophy. What do you think, Justin?
It's the least surprising thing I think I've ever seen is this link and potential appointment. I like Alex Neil. I think he is a good tactician. I think the Stoke move was a poor one from him, but just because Stoke's a really terrible club to be at in terms of a manager, and as well as that, it just felt like he was moving in a slightly different direction with his career with Sunderland. So timing wise, it wasn't great for him. But I think this is a good move, because I think, as I say, he's a good tactician. He keeps teams solid. He keeps them compact. They're very difficult to score and break down, and that's what Millwall are. That's what Millwall need, because I don't think they've got enough quality going forwards to justify anything else right now. So I think Alex Neil will have them finishing mid-table with absolute ease.
Yeah, I like Alex Neil. I think he's not the most fashionable appointment by any means, but he's very solid. He's very solid, isn't he? He's done a good job at every club he's been at, bar Stoke. But there seems to be a trend with managers doing very well at every club they've been at, bar Stoke. As you say, it may be down to poor career choices on his behalf, and for that reason, you won't hear Sunderland fans saying anything nice about him. But he did do a great job there as well. He's got a record of working on a budget. His style of play suits Millwall. Is he going to get Millwall promoted? Probably not, but he can leave the club in a better position than when he first came in, and I think that's a really underrated trait in a manager. And I think, in general, Alex Neil is an underrated manager and fully deserves another crack at Championship level. So I think it's a good appointment, Justin.
Yeah, and the last former Stoke manager that Millwall appointed, it went very well in Gary Rowett. So maybe. I think Alex Neil's got something to prove as well. I know I jest with that one, but Alex Neil, like Gary Rowett, has got something to prove, and that's his ability to compete and be a good manager at this level. I think he will get Millwall knocking close to the playoffs again in a couple of years' time, because he did it with Preston. And obviously he got Norwich promoted as well, albeit with different circumstances, but that's what he does. He guides clubs in a positive direction. He got Sunderland promoted from League One, which a lot of managers have they've struggled to do. So yeah, he's a guy who will get you going in the right direction, as I've already said. So I think it would be a good appointment, the right one. He's just a bit of a miserable man sometimes, but I think that will work in his favour.
He is a bit miserable, but still a good manager. You don't need to be cheerful all the time to be a good manager, I always say. There was a crazy game at Home Park as Plymouth and Middlesbrough played out a 3-3 draw in the meeting between former Manchester United and England teammates. In the dugout, 3-word reviews for Plymouth. Scott says Rooney and Phelan. For Middlesbrough, Jamie on our Patreon says defensive disaster class again. Sedgefield says tactically naive again. Maybe the case, Justin, but this was undeniably a great game.
Yeah, it was a great game, and it was absolutely bonkers watching it on Soccer Saturday, just watching the scores come in. I think they cut to the reporter at one point where Plymouth scored to make it 3-2 with Bundu, and then literally they come away and Latte Lath scored, and the reporter didn't have time to see that goal because he was talking about the Plymouth goal. It was just a bonkers game and again a wonderful indictment of what the Championship is. You got Middlesbrough moving in one direction, Plymouth struggling. This should have been as predicting it to be my banker of the weekend. This should have been a very, very straightforward fixture for Middlesbrough, but credit to Plymouth, they didn't make it a straightforward fixture for Middlesbrough. Yeah,
there's been a few crazy games at Home Park this season, haven't there? It's if there's a madhouse in the Championship, it's Home Park, isn't it? You've definitely got your money's worth with a season ticket there. Middlesbrough's defending was a shambles at times in this one. I've often defended their defending this season because I don't think it's been as bad as the goals against tally perhaps suggests, but this was bad, really bad. They can count themselves a bit fortunate to have gone back to Teesside with anything from this game, really, because not just because they went behind 3 times, but because Plymouth probably should have scored more in this one. Borough gave them so many opportunities, and for Borough to concede 3 very similar goals is criminal. So a poor performance by Borough's standards this season, but encouragement for Plymouth. They've gone from they have gone bottom of the table with Hull winning, but it's their first point in 5, and they've had consecutive good performances against 2 very good sides, Justin.
Yeah, Plymouth are brave here. I think they had to be brave, and they were in and out of possession. They didn't start this game slow either. They were good at getting into Middlesbrough, not allowing Borough to get a foothold in the game. I was saying in the preview show that if they allow Borough to do that, it's going to be one-sided as it was against Oxford for Middlesbrough, where they battered them. But Plymouth showed them absolutely no respect, which is, I think, what you need to do, and that's evidently very important when coming up against a team with the attacking nous that Middlesbrough have. Still poor in certain defensive moments, but look, I've seen a huge improvement, a massive improvement in the last 2 games. It's no coincidence that comes with Mike Phelan's introduction to the coaching staff. It's a very obvious pickup there. There seems to be just a lot more organisation, and I don't know if a man management side of things is helping either.
Yeah, I think the Mike Phelan thing is a massive boost. One theory, which might be unfounded, but certainly seems to be the case, is that Wayne Rooney is only as good as his assistant manager, because his best spell so far as a manager was at Derby, where Liam Rosenior was his assistant. Then he struggled at Birmingham, and up until the point where Mike Phelan's coming at Plymouth. And even though Phelan's most successful days are well behind him, he's still one of the most decorated assistant managers around, isn't he? I mean, he was at Man United only a couple of years ago. So it seems like he's having a big influence at Plymouth. And I think you're absolutely right, Justin. I don't think it's any coincidence at all that Phelan, Plymouth's performances have taken an upturn since Phelan's come in. So it'll be interesting to see if that continues. Whether he keeps Plymouth up is another thing, but it's clearly having a positive effect. Wayne Rooney meets another former teammate of his on Boxing Day, Justin, as they go to Frank Lampard's Coventry. Bloody hell. Sky are going to have a heart attack over that one, aren't they? Oh, that's going to be all over Sky Sports News. And finally, Oxford United. They were comfortably beaten 4-0 away at Leeds in their first game since sacking Des Buckingham. 3-word reviews for Leeds. Rich Lay on our Patreon says Oxford no show. Lee says got another 3. Elliot says took the piss. Yeah, Gary Rowett was officially appointed on Friday afternoon, but wasn't in charge for this one. He watched from the stands. Probably a wise choice, because this was a walk in the park for Leeds, wasn't it, Justin?
Well, yeah, utterly dominant. I think so dominant that I think Patrick Bamford would have scored if he got minutes, but alas, he didn't come on. Look, when you catch Leeds in the mood, you're fucked. Right, I'm going to be blunt. They were in the mood, Leeds, and they were very incisive. I think you only got to look at Brendan Harrison's goal as a lovely example that when they play with pace and intuition, they can carve teams open at will, and they did that. They did that several times, and it was so one-sided. So, from a Gary Rowett perspective, he's probably looking at this and going, I think he'd be quietly confident. I'd be quietly confident in Gary Rowett improving this. Don't get me wrong. Look, this was a game where they were probably 99% going to lose. And I think they needed a really poor performance to probably give Gary Rowett a good idea of what he needs to improve. And it's clearly a defensive organisation at the moment.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that, because I don't think anyone expected Oxford to get anything here. They were never in danger of causing an upset. Przemysław Placheta had a good chance early on, but by and large, Leeds kept them well at bay. And the reason I disagree with you, Justin, is because the difference in class was very obvious in this game. The issue is getting outclassed by Leeds is nothing to be embarrassed about for Oxford, because they're simply a much better side. But how often Oxford are being outclassed is a concern, because it is 6 losses in 7 now, 1 win in 16, which is certainly a cause for concern, isn't it? And that's why you've got to say Gary Rowett's got his hands full here, hasn't he?
Well, like I said, I think he needed a performance like that from Oxford to give him a really blatant idea of what needs to improve quickly. He's been in this situation before. Birmingham was an absolute steaming pile of shit when he joined, when he was first appointed back in sort of whenever it was, 2015. And they were just, his first game was off the back of that 8-0 defeat to Bournemouth, if you remember. It was a horrendous time to come in, and he got them organised, he got them structured and difficult to play through. There was some difference in quality. That Birmingham team was probably a little bit better than this Oxford team. But probably not that much better. Again, if a lot of people think back to that team, it was made up of free transfers under Lee Clark. It wasn't great. So I think he's got a similar issue here, but I think the squad's the league's improved with it. So yeah, his hands are full, but I like I said, I think I'd be very confident in Gary Rowett getting more out of this Oxford team than a lot of managers or a lot of available managers probably would do.
Yeah, well, 1 win in 16. I mean, that's scary, isn't it? That's essentially a 30-year season. And just glancing at the underlying data in front of me right now, there aren't many games in there where Oxford can say, well, we should have got 3 points there. And that's an awfully big sample size of a team's season to be saying that about. I think Gary Rowett will come in and make them a lot harder to beat. I'm certain about that. He will at least take them up a level. I'll say that much for sure. But I think Oxford recently have been a few levels below where they need to be to stay up. Quality-wise, they're lacking as well. So January is going to be a big month, as it will be for many teams. But Oxford are one of those who simply have to have a good window. If they showed a statement of intent by sacking Des Buckingham to getting Gary Rowett to stay in the Championship, then they need to do the same here when it comes to signing players next month, don't they? So let's see if they do that. But yeah, it's concerning with Oxford, even though they have got the obvious boost of Rowett coming in. Just I think it is worth having a conversation at this stage about the relegation fight, because it seems like the table is really starting to fall into place now at different ends of the table. We had a few months of craziness, but most teams seem to have an idea of where they're going to be fighting this season. And I can't help but look at that bottom three of Cardiff, Plymouth and Oxford and think to myself, I wouldn't be surprised if that's the bottom three come the end of the season. Not saying it will be, and each of them have good reasoning behind why they could avoid the drop this season. But I would say they're the three most likely for me, which is obvious to say because they're in the bottom three. But before I looked at the likes of Hull, QPR, Portsmouth, and have confidence that they would get better, these three, I don't have the same amount of confidence about. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, look, you look at Cardiff, they've got Omar Rees, a very inexperienced manager, and a squad that is vastly underperforming and continues to underperform. With Plymouth, you've got a team that is devoid of quality with a manager who is inexperienced. Mike Phelan comes in and gives them a boost, but how much can Mike Phelan prop up that Plymouth team? That's an interesting question, and it will be interesting to see how they progress over the next few game weeks. Oxford, again, I'm very confident in Gary Rowett improving this team, but how good is that squad? How good is that squad? How good is their recruitment going to be? So there's a lot of question marks with them. Then I look at Stoke and I think very inexperienced manager, very poorly run football club. That panics me a little bit for them. Hull and Ruben Sellers, again, inexperienced manager for the best part, in comparison to other managers. And again, poorly run, but poor recruitment strategy. That could bite them in the arse as well. I'm looking at those 5 teams and I'm concerned, quite considerably. Portsmouth have showing much more than the others as well. So that's why I'm not quite all in on them either. So bottom three, yes, but I'd be looking at Stoke, Hull with a significant eyebrow raise, I think would be the best way to describe it.
There always seems to be one team as well who absolutely drop like a stone at around this stage of the season as well, don't they? The drop starts around New Year time, so you can't rule that out either. But I'm just looking at our bottom three and thinking they seem to be considerably weaker than a lot of the other teams in the division. I don't see a whole host of other teams who are in as much trouble as them. So, yeah, it's interesting. But that brings me nicely onto the polls, ladies and gents, because this is the part of the show where we give the listeners 3 questions on Twitter. Just want to get their thoughts on everything to do with the Championship. So the question we asked was this: do you think this will be the bottom 3 at the end of the season? 59% of people said no, Justin. 41% said yes. Just seeing who else is suggested. People said Hull. Hull, one team who are getting a bit of stick from other suggestions there. QPR have been mentioned as well, but it looks like QPR have got away from it now, doesn't it? So, that looks like it's a bit of a one that's up in the air. This is one that's up in the air as well, Justin. Is Alex Neil a good appointment for Millwall? Yes or no?
Yeah, brilliant appointment for Millwall. I think it is.
Wouldn't go as far to say brilliant. I'd say good. 51% of people said yes, it is a good appointment. 49% of people said no. So a bit of a divisive one, that one as well. And finally, this is I knew this one would be divisive. Who's the best Sky co-commentator on Championship games? Don Goodman, Lee Hendry, or Andy Hinchcliffe?
Oh, Lee Hendry. I actually quite like Lee Hendry.
Who do you reckon won?
I think Hinchcliffe won.
36% of people said Hinchcliffe. 33% said Goodman. 31% said Hendry. I like Lee Hendry. I think he's quite good. Not saying the other. I think the other two get a lot of stick, much more stick than they deserve anyway. Whereas Hendry, I think, is actually quite a good co-com.
Yeah, I like Lee Hendry a lot. He breaks down games quite nicely, and I don't think Hinchcliffe quite a lot of times doesn't know what day of the week is. So that's why I'll say on him.
Some people are saying we should have put a none of them option in, which is absolutely
Savage.
fair. Anyway, ladies and gents, those have been the polls, and this has been the Second Tier Podcast. But if you are a Patreon subscriber, don't go anywhere, because we've got the extended edition of the weekend show coming up, which we like to call Zamora Time. We'll be talking about VAR in the EFL, Cardiff being haunted by a former flame, and the revival of Mikey Johnston. If you're not a Patreon subscriber, sign up to get Zamora Time every single weekend. Head over to patreon.com/second tier. Link is in the description of this episode. We'll be back again tomorrow, because we're doing our preview show, sponsored by SBK, looking ahead to the Boxing Day round of games. It's that time of the year, ladies and gents, where our schedule is all over the place. So just tune in as and when the episodes come out, because it's the festive period, and that's what we bloody love about this league, the carnage around this time of year. But this has been the Second Tier Podcast. I have been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.